Yeah, I just thought I would choose some really, really good lighting for this very important video and get some hair and makeup done. I like that extra eczema that they've done there, just a spot here and there. It's quite realistic. It's good. I like it. I feel like I've not had the Johnny Depp treatment. So I'm making all of my videos private, and the videos that I make from here on out, including this one, this should be public. If it's made private, then I'll make it public. It's just going to be about stuff that's not about anything to do with what's going on, because in here I'm not as naive as I seem, but out of here I am. And it's a kind of cognitive dissonance where I'm aware, very much aware, that the world is actually full of predators, and that most of those predators appear to be kind, nice, decent, normal humans. In reality, it's not the case. And when I have said I have met, like I haven't like diagnosed people as a antisocial or narcissistic, but I've said, well, I mean, it's clear from the behaviour that they are, and I bet you a fucking ice cream that they would be diagnosed as such if a clinical expert was given the information that I have. And people say, oh, come on, you think everyone's a narcissist? And it's like, well, no, I don't. But it is also true that narcissistic and, sociopathic risks and attacks are not evenly distributed throughout the population. That is not how statistics work. And I am a totally prime target. And the thing is that prime targets do not need to be perfect victims. The perfect victim fallacy abides all through the justice system and everywhere, and it's very unfortunate for the likes of me. But the part of the cognitive dissonance that is not working for me, as I realised in my very nice walk in the torrential downpour today, which I had prepared for by bringing a light anorak and my knee ankle length gumboots, and shitloads of fucking, I'd really loaded up the tear ducts. I had cried quite a lot. But buses stopped. I had to walk with my fucking suitcase. Anyway, it occurred to me, I was walking past the graveyard at sort of Church Corner. I was just like, doink. I'm like, why is it that I know so much about antisocial people? And antisocial people, those are psychopaths and sociopaths. Narcissists don't quite make the cut, but it's psychopaths and sociopaths. And it's unfortunate that the DSM has sort of amalgamated those into antisocial personality disorder. I mean, that's the effect that it's acting against society, but they are not the same condition. And I'm not capable of telling the difference between one or the other, because people can operate outside of their diagnostic paradigms, especially to a layperson. But I mean, you can tell someone has an antisocial personality, which is if I want to speak legally, a criminal disposition. It's basically lying, cheating, stealing from people they know are helpless and don't deserve it. I mean, lies are a really good start, and lies that desperately harm somebody else to damage their life to the point that it's, almost has no worth anymore, to the point where they try to kill themselves. There's not too much to bother the finer points of a person's sort of conclusatory apparatus about what kind of person we're dealing with. And I know what kind of people that I'm dealing with, but the other thing is that, and that's where the cognitive dissonance comes in, is that, I part of me, and a shamefully large part of me subscribes to the myth that the best disinfectant is sunlight. And that is a logical fallacy, because if you want to use the simile, which is, basically if you want to, the best thing to do with anything, like wash laundry, is to put it out on the line on a sunny day, because sunlight is literally a disinfectant. And if you've got any bacteria or fungus or viruses in your laundry, that includes picking stuff up from the swimming pool, from the beach, whatever, sunlight's going to do a good antimicrobial job. But that's a bit like saying there's no smoke without fire, which is presupposing that the only thing that the laundry is going to be exposed to is sunlight. That does not explain why there's no smoke without fire as a fallacy. But there's no smoke without fire is circular, completely circular. It's like, well, smoke is defined as, the byproduct of material that's on fire, which intrinsically includes the element of fire. So if you're saying there's no smoke without fire, then all you're doing is stating a fact about smoke. You're not making a state of, you're not stating a fact about rumours or innuendo, because some things that appear to be smoke are not smoke. It could be mist, it could be dry ice, it could be some smearing on your glasses, for example. So you want to avoid those circular aphorisms, I suppose. That would probably be culturally, if not universally, assigned aphorism status. So the same thing goes with, like there's no disinfectant like sunlight. So, I've deliberately put my my own statement, which I, was my own interview of myself about my first two charges from the 4th of July. Like, I've got part 1 and part 2 open to the public, and I think they've been open to the public the whole time, and they've had loads of views. And the thing is that lots and lots of my videos subsequently have been about that particular ruffian I'll talk about the ruffians who aren't police, because the police are representing the ruffians. The fact that the police are ruffians themselves is a rather separate matter when it comes to the criminal court, which is why I've made everything private now. Yeah, so I mean, I've deliberately left that open to public viewing for getting on for 6 months, and I realise that and then there's a second, those are first 2 charges, and then there's a third charge, as anyone who's ever listened to my video knows. And I talk about that a lot too, and it's not disconnected from the first 2 charges whatsoever. And the thing is that I treat YouTube as my diary of all of the abuse from the beginning and well before it got into the criminal sphere. Try as I might to get the police to take some notice of it. But what I had to get a little bit tough with myself. Firstly, my viewership is burgeoned from 7 to like 174 in a few months, which is nothing for a content creator, but it's quite a lot for somebody who gets virtually no likes, right, and virtually no comments of any material substance. And so I mean, I as I've said many times, I've got no supporters, but when I was walking in the rain, I really did have, your subconscious does a little bit of, it does a load, your subconscious does most of its work when it's focused on something else, and I think just sort of trying to not get completely soaked in that almost unprecedented deluge today, in which I missed my bus and had to walk from Blenheim Road to Church Corner, which is a very pretty walk, but I was really soaked. And I was just like, fuck, man, I'm such a fucking dumbass, because what I'm exposing the facts to is not daylight. I'm exposing it to a prosecution team that has no morals, that is not serving the public, that is serving their client as if they were a private prosecutor. And I believe that their client also has private prosecutors working for them as well. Litigators, I should say. I think they've got a lot behind them. And I think that everything that I put out there is fodder for their prosecution arguments. And it's interesting because Voldemort in his or her statement in a different court had made the claim that what I was doing was DAVO, which is an acronym that stands for deny, attack, and then together reverse victim and offender. DAVO, deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. And that was when I was a very staunch and devoted and very emotionally engaged supporter of Voldemort, had told her about, I'd said, you don't need to explain what it is that they are doing to you. And I do believe that they were doing that to her because corollary evidence is everywhere for that, antisocial personality people can and are victimised as well as others. And I believe, to a lesser extent than I do now, but I do believe from my corroborating sort of witnessing of these things, that she was a victim of Darvo. But what was so spectacularly Darvo was her including in her affidavit to court that what I was doing was Darvo, which is meta Darvo. And one of the cool things about being really smart is that I suppose, I mean, the term pass, P-A-R-S-E, is really overused as a wrong term for interpret. Passing is something that's done on a quite technical linguistic level, and you have to be trained to do it. But you know, it's misused, and it's not used as an analogy. It was just misused by journalists who didn't understand what it meant, and then it caught on like wildfire. Whereas pass, but it's sort of like quite a nice, convenient term to use, and I can. So for me, I'm just going to lower myself to adopt the term pass to mean sort of, you know, assess and analyse and interpret what happened there. I'm really good at doing that, and I can, because I always know there is some underlying mathematical structure to what's happening here, and, you know, just as there's only something like 7 musical tunes in the world, and I'm not a musical person, so I don't know if I should say tunes or chords or whatever, but, you know, and all of those are just a sort of a mixture of the other, and, you know, there's some people who have done very good job sort of showing that, even though songs sound very different, they are actually very similar, and one of those is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and Happy Birthday, you know. But I can find that pattern and I can figure out what it is, and so I don't need to go, like I told her that about Darvo, and now she's telling me that I'm doing Darvo, but she's only doing Darvo because she only used that term because I told her, but I'm not. Like, it's really tricky. All I need to do is say she's doing meta Darvo. She's doing Darvo about Darvo. And then if someone doesn't understand what meta means, people often mistake it for... Firstly, the number one mistake is, you know, if someone says metadata, people make the mistake of thinking they mean megadata, which is a wrong term for big data. But meta just means it's something times itself. And meta does not mean self-referential either, which is the other thing that's happening in sort of Hollywood script writing. So, you know, being John Malkovich, that wasn't meta. It wasn't John Malkovich about John Malkovich. You know what I mean? So it's always like, if it's... I mean, you can't use it for any term because you're going to get into a point where you're going to encounter what... Wittgenstein was talking about, like, you know, like we can make up any grammatically sensible phrase or term, well, phrase, I suppose, really, sort of a statement about something. And then we look and we analyse that statement and we go, oh, what could it mean? And then we find things in it that have meanings. And really all we're doing is staring into a crystal ball and we're just finding things in our own assholes. And he's saying, you know, like, if you know, you can make a grammatical structure. And I think it was Oh, I know it was. Who's that dick who should stay in philosophy of linguistics and stay the fuck out of politics? Noam Chomsky, who made a completely nonsensical but totally completely grammatical sentence about something green or something, and it just shows that something can be completely sensical, grammatical, and yet make no sort of cognitive sense. It doesn't cognitively connect one with the real state of affairs. It doesn't cognitively connect someone with a conceptual state of affairs, even, you know. And one of my talents is, you know, cutting through that, not with the speed of light, because these things don't work like that, but finding that mathematical structure underneath, and that's logic. And so, yeah, if someone doesn't know what meta means, like I can say to the judge, well, that's just, you know, well, I'm not going to be seeing a judge about it anytime soon, not until I choose to. But I can just say, well, that's meta Davo, you see. And they'd say, what do you mean by meta? And I said, and I would say, and I don't like these assholes because that's what they tend to do. In my experience, my limited experience with judges, but judges seem much like any other figures of authority. They ain't special. I shouldn't say just judges, you know, any judiciary adjudicators and whatever. They're just people who have been chosen by other people who have it's just the blind leading the blind, raising the blind above the other blind, you know, going, oh, you seem like you know what you're talking about, you should be a judge, whereas they don't know what they're fucking talking about and they shouldn't be a judge. But or an adjudicator, or what I mean is they shouldn't have the ability to decide whether or not somebody should or should not have something that is fundamental to the ability to live a life of any quality. Quality, I said, not equality. I do not confuse the two whatsoever. I do not have equality. I do not expect equality. I don't even expect fairness, but I ought to expect fairness. And what I because I've gained a lot of sass, as has been put. I've gained a lot of sass since enduring my 2 years of goddamn harrowing fucking abuse, which is serial victimisation, and it happens by its own momentum, you see. Why does it keep happening? Because it keeps happening. That's why it keeps happening, because it keeps happening. It's like, you know, one of those perpetual motion sort of ding dong, you know, like a metronome, but with more impetus. In fact, nothing but impetus. And I've had a lot of people, when I've said something that is in the scope of my training or my education or my general field of knowledge, that is completely I shouldn't say accepted, because something being accepted is really a quality of the people doing the accepting, not a quality of the thing being accepted, which is why, we're the most trusted insurance company. I think that was AMI or something like that. It's like, well, people may trust you, but it doesn't mean you're trustworthy. Like, you may be the most trusted, but people are fucking idiots. So, you know, like, if, you know, could you make a bolder claim? Could you say you're the most trustworthy? I don't think you can, or you would. But, you know, fields of reasonable scientific integrity have come up with very well established conclusions about things, and it's those things that form my beliefs, right? I don't just believe every fucking thing I hear. I do. I do a little bit when it comes to the qualitative, because I have I've been talking to a lot of different people in Christchurch, especially since I've been shoved into the abyss, and it's just sort of opened me up to a different way of seeing people, and also a different way of being seen, and a different way of interacting. So I do. I'm quite credulous about those sort of individual conversations that I have. But when it comes to things, when someone in authority says to me, what do you mean by, let's think of I want to embarrass them. I mean, I can't embarrass anyone in particular, but I'm just trying to think of a kind of a piece of shop talk. It's not even shop talk. Let's just say baleen whales. And I'd be saying something about baleen whales, for example, and what if, and then the person would go, what do you mean by baleen whale? And so these days I say, I experiment with different methods of communication. Not many of them seem to have any success. I either seem like a quiet little mouse, or I seem like someone who's too big for her boots. And both of those things are because no one has any fucking respect for me, no matter what I do or what I say. But I don't say, I mean the whales of the type that doesn't have teeth, but instead has those filtration this is a very hard sentence to compose. Speech is generally pretty fluent, and mine's very fluent, and I can't quite actually think about how to. I can't think of a noun really to explain what baleen is, but we all know it filters krill. There we go. Any minute now I'll start up a Bunsen burner and bring out some litmus paper that'll, make all my fucking primary schooling all come together all of a sudden and turn me into a raging success. I'm not going to go, well, what I mean, I'm like, and I'm not going to go, oh, you fucking dumbass, you don't know what a baleen whale is. I've said either it's got nothing to do with what I mean, it's got to do with what marine biologists have classified as part of the characteristics of a particular kind of large ocean creature. I don't need to be that facetious, but I can also I can be a bit more subtle, and it's a little bit covert aggressive, because I think covert aggression is completely the correct thing to do when you're not being the dick, but the other person's being a dick. Covert aggression is no good when you're being the dick. If you're in the wrong, be honest. Don't be covert aggressive. But if you're in the right, you can be covert aggressive. And so then I can just patronise them back and go, if they say, what do you mean by baleen whale? I can say, oh, so baleen means, and then with any chance I would have done a little bit more research about how to speak fluently about baleen. I honestly don't particularly know what it is. I don't know what it's made out of. Is it cartilage? Is it rice noodles? It's got to be one of those two things, right? It's like, don't motherfuck me, motherfucker. I'll explain what a word means to you. But the thing is that judges aren't going to take kindly to that because judges are not impartial. Judges are just normal human beings, and they're probably worse than normal human beings because they've got their fucking... So that's why I've elected jury for the third charge, which is in the second kind of tranche of trials. And why? And again, I'm spilling too many beans, but like, it's not that I think it's exposing it to daylight. It could be exposing it to datura, anthrax. But I'm not leaving it to one fucking dickhead to decide, But yeah, what I realised is I'm just giving, if I had a playbook, and I don't think a playbook is really the right term to use because a playbook is a tactical, it's a literature, it's a piece of literature that sets out in detail a tactical strategy. What am I? That's a fucking dumb thing to fucking say. Tactics are sub steps of strategies, but you know what I mean. Mostly it's the term applies to sports. Team sports, opposing team sports. And I guess to less, I don't know if it's used for war, but those kinds of things. Like, yeah, it's deceitful, but it's not dishonest. It's like, well, we know we're entering into a competition here, and we're gonna try to pull the wool over each other's eyes. But that's not what justice should be. Justice shouldn't be, let's use every trick up our sleeve that the rules allow. Or the person playing ref, which would be the judge, is allowing. That's not justice, and we're not two equal teams. And my whole thing of, well, I'm just going to say everything that crosses my mind and everything that happens. And, because the person in one of the charges, and I just want to say that the reason that I wasn't kicked out of PDS, but because they can't, they can just be honest with you. But PDS was conflicted. And what conflicted means is that there's a conflict of legal interest in a fairly detailed legal definition, which is when, generally, if you approach a law firm to act on your behalf against somebody else, they have to do conflict checks, and the conflict checks are mostly to do with whether or not they've defended the person that you're trying to take action against. That's the most obvious way that one could be conflicted. Another one would be related to them or anything like that, but conflict of interest often means not exactly what it seems to mean. A conflict of interest can just mean there exists a possibility for a conflict, but conflict of interest legally sort of means something a little bit different, because there are rules. There are legal rules, unfortunately. So a private law firm would just go nah. But PDS is by definition public, and you can't just kick out every fucking client who's been who's been prosecuted on behalf of whom you've defended before. But what this does mean is that one of the people involved in my trials has been defended by PDS. And that means nothing here nor there. I mean, I'm innocent, and it could mean the other person is, but it tells me, yeah, there's been some, people have been snapped before. And the great thing about getting into PDS finally, which is what had been advised to me by previous lawyers, who it was just like, my situation is just too complicated. I'm sorry, the charges do not say anything about the complexity of the reality behind the charges. That I really need PDS that has the same. It has the power of the Crown, like police prosecution does. The full resources of the Crown. And I don't have that anymore. I had it for about a week, and I don't have it. And we're not on an even playing field, and telling the truth doesn't work in adversarial courts. And it could do. I mean, the adversarial system could work if there were the right people making the decisions, and if the laws were followed, and so many other things. Then I think you'd need to apply the scientific method, because I'm sorry, but judges and lawyers, when they say they look at evidence, they don't know what they're talking about. They're just like little kids and wearing their mum's high heels. That's not evidence, it's legal evidence, which is like saying Jerusalem artichoke, And so all of the humanity that I've shown, the honesty I've shown, the self-awareness that I've shown, the linguistic fallacies that I've talked about, the grief that I've gone through, the strength that I've shown, all of those are going to be manipulated and used against me. Like Voldemort used Darvo against me on the meta level, these guys are going to use everything that I've said against me. They're either going to emulate it and kind of preempt my use of it, or they're going to use it to find weak spots, or they're going to come up with an argument that will scupper or appear to scupper my truth. There's no such thing as an individual's truth. There is the truth that we are all participating in. But what I mean is, by my truth is my expression of the truth. So they're going to lie, I'm going to tell the truth, but they're going to I don't think I'm going to be less persuasive at all. I think that most people are quite good at telling sincerity, but I'm I'm not in Kansas anymore, Toto. No, so I think from now on I'm just gonna have videos on which I talk about the things that I've learned about. I think I do an episode on working dogs for the blind. I did mention a bit about what interesting stuff I learned about that. And I think I should do my whole episodes on that. For instance, did you know that guide dogs used to automatically be retired at 13, but these days they're just retired at the time that they are showing signs of no longer being capable of doing their job, which is protecting their owner, master, whatever. And that can vary. And also, they're not retired like a replicant is retired. And in many cases, the owner of the guide dog gets to keep the retired dog as a pet, and still gets a new working dog, and the old working dog becomes a member of the family. And I was doing my full, Patrick Gower kind of. I did really grill this poor man, but I was just so fascinated. Like, how does it understand that it's no longer doing what it's supposed to do to protect you? Do they have to get trained out of it like Eddie's soldier? Like, is there like a kind of a territorial dispute? Like, I mean, like, I've been on, farm estates where the collies outside and the fucking beagles inside, or it's not a beagle, but it was the only dog name I could think of. It's like, well, they're both beloved, but one's working and has to stay outside, and the other one sits in front of the fucking fire, being fed fucking chopped liver or something. And it's like, how does that get reconciled when there's a relationship balance change? And I know, it's so weird. Like, and I was just thinking about my granddad, who was just like, kill me now. When he had to retire, he was just like, I can't. I mean, not when he retired, but when he had to go into a rest home. Like, when he retired, he was just basically, he was an engineer, and he was very senior in Ministry of Works, which was obviously the predecessor to something fucking retarded now. And he was a civil servant through and through, So when he retired, he was just like, because you just retire and you're like, he just put all of that engineering energy into growing strawberries. There's nothing light-hearted about that strawberry patch, mate. And then when he basically, he and Nana had to go into the rest home because Nana had fallen a few times and down steps, because that's the way he designed the house, which is fine, except when you're in your 90s or approaching your 90s. And, they really could not operate independently anymore. And as soon as he couldn't operate independently anymore, he was just like my mum had to keep telling him, Dad, you have got to stop asking the nurses to murder you. That's not fair. But, I mean, seriously, I'd give it a crack. Just slide him a Werther's original and, once his useful life was over, I mean, he wasn't a masochist. He wasn't a self-plagiarist, what's that thing? Oh, there we go, that's an extra, that was the last of that brain cell gone that knew what that fucking thing was called. Plagiarism, pretty close. Good job, Caitlin. Yeah, like I didn't really agree with this guy so much that because he's had like 7 dogs. I guess he's been blind a long time. And he seemed sort of surprised at my question, like, how do they adapt to not working anymore? And he's just like, well, they just sort of get to fucking take a load off, Sally. And I'm like, but what if they don't want to take a load off? Like my granddad didn't. He just wanted to fucking like be fucking smothered with a pillow, you know. He didn't even want morphine because that was like totally not the army way, you know. He would never be so self-indulgent. Anyway, if anyone wants to give me a pack or dose of morphine, they're most welcome to. Hey, coppers. Hey. Alright, well... yeah, I sort of ruined the not talking about it by bringing up coppers. But basically, I'm just going to tell stories about things that I learn, which is a lot of stuff, because that's the kind of person I am. Or am I, prosecution? Am I? Have I been playing a long game? Okay, bye.